Yeah, super bullish here on the macro, just kind of like what Fars was saying. You know, I'm with him on the medium and long term 100%, and I'm starting to warm up a little more on the short term. I was a bit more bearish on the short term, and he was a bit more steadfast, which in hindsight has kind of played out here, at least in the short term played out. But now we're at the other resistance, right? So even though this looks great to me on the monthly, and I care a lot more about monthly, weekly than I do about daily or below. I honestly don't even go below daily very much these days. But where was I? So we're on a daily downtrend. So basically, because of the daily downtrend, even though I'm bullish here, your RR, and we talked about this in the Discord earlier today. Even though I'm mega bullish, the RR here, you're risking 5% on the new high, and I think getting back above 90 is almost like a guarantee. Once we're back in this range here, that we spent so much time in, and this will just like a deviation, and it won't even look like a deviation. It will be one where you change, you broke down right into the market makers' bids, look bearish, they gobbled up a bunch of coins, shook a bunch of people out, and then you're right back into the range. Like, couldn't be any more bullish, right? And that's what I expect to happen. That's my base case also. But with that said, especially the way the price action's been and the news has been lately, you have to also acknowledge that you're 5% from there. So your RR is actually better, even just to retest the low is 10% versus 5. So you're even 2-to-1 just to retest the low, and then God forbid we get a bad CPI print or Trump, China does something crazy, Trump does something crazy again with tariffs. Who knows? Like right now the market is skittish. So basically all that to say that if you were more like in the Fars camp and you ended up catching a long down here, I wouldn't close it because I think this is potentially the bottom before we rip to 200, 300, 400k Bitcoin. But you might want to hedge or trim. For me, I actually re-hedged, even though I didn't nail the bottom as well as Fars did. I do have a net long here, so generally from lower even. So I'm happy to hedge here and really hope that CPI is good, basically. And that's basically the gist on Bitcoin. I mean, the macro, talked about this a bit in the Discord, so my mind's a little jumbled of like forgetting what I just said and what I was saying earlier today. I don't know how far it's those two shows back to back, but well, another good thing here, since the monthly is an uptrend, right? Obviously, you have your low, your high, and then trying to make your higher low here. Something to do when you dial in. The weekly actually did just the opposite, right? And the weekly is a pretty big time frame. And this is why I'm a big stickler for monthly and quarterly and even sometimes yearly charts, because I just think if you're tapped into the daily or even in this case the weekly, which people think of, especially in crypto, they think of that as a long-term time frame. I think of that as more of a medium-term time frame, because if you're just looking at the weekly and you're following Dow theory, you have a low here, a lower high, and then a lower low, and so you'd be getting bearish down here on this break. Without context, you'd be saying, wow, lower high, lower low, weekly breakdown, I'm bearish, and you'd be bearish at the Pico bottom, right? Because the context is the monthly high or low. So even though you have a lower high, lower low on the weekly, because you're running into a potential monthly high or low, obviously, I don't know how to say. Obviously, it's a bad place to go short. So something to consider there.